going to do a little bit of a recap of our performance sprint. And then we're going to be joined by Richard, who's the developer evangelist of Square, and he's going to be talking about, I think we're having some audio issues, so just a sec while we work it out. How's that? Anyone? We're checking on audio, so hold on, nothing like a live. How's that? You can let us know via the chat if we're. Anyone?
Audio's.
Okay, audio's fine. Great. Thank you, everyone. Apologies. I'm going to start from the top. Good morning. I'm Sarah Hicks, co-founder and CEO of Reaction Commerce. This is Mike, and this is Tyson from our engineering team. We're excited to join you all for our March Reaction Action. Sounding like the audio is good, so we are recording live from our headquarters here in Santa Monica, California. Here's our agenda for this Reaction Action. I'm going to do an overview of Reaction Commerce. We're going to share a recap of our performance sprint and also talk about some of the things that we're working on next. We're going to be joined by Richard, the developer evangelist from Square, who's going to talk about implementing Square payments in Reaction Commerce. And then, as always, we'll take general Q&A. You can ask questions using the Zoom chat feature or the Q&A feature. If we don't get to your all the questions, we'll be sure to address them after the fact in a recap blog post or via our other channels, mostly Gitter. So just a quick overview of Reaction. So we are a completely open source e-commerce platform. We support functionality for both shops and marketplaces. So all the kind of core functionality, or we like to say table stakes functionality you would need to build a shop or marketplace. So that includes inventory, catalog management, shopping cart, checkout, catalog, accounts, orders, order processing. We support out of the box multiple payment solutions, shipping providers via Shippo, tax solutions with Avalara or TaxCloud. You name it, all the kind of base functionality, completely open, completely extendable. We are GPL licensed, seen lots of activity in the open source code base. I believe I should get the numbers on this, but we're already internationalized for over 25 languages. There's currency conversion, localized currency formats. If you are interested in learning more about the project or more about the company, go to reactioncommerce.com and get in touch. There's a form there. Just give us a little bit of information and we'll follow up. Happy to do live demos, walk you through the product, or share more information about how we operate. These are other ways you can get involved with us. So we welcome contributions. If you're interested in working with us on the developer side, join our Gitter chat, put questions in our forums. If you're an agency or a dev shop and you're working with clients and you want to work more closely with us, definitely let us know. We're working pretty closely already with quite a few agencies and dev shops who are working on projects on behalf of their clients. We do regular, I think it's twice a month, community calls. There's information on that via the link you see there. And then we're regularly updating our docs. The docs are the best place to go to get information about the project, how to do things, how to install the project, you name it. So this is some of the teammates. This is some of the pictures from our headquarters here. We are hiring, lots of positions open. So if you're interested, go to reactioncommerce.com/careers and apply. If you have any questions about what it's like to work here, you can reach out to any one of us on Gitter or any of our other channels, and we'd be happy to talk about what it's like to work at Reaction Commerce. We are a distributed first company, so even though we do have a headquarter here in Santa Monica, more than half the team is now distributed around the world. So we are very time zone friendly and time zone challenged, might be another way to put it. So if you're interested, just get in touch. Even if you don't see a position open that interests you, you should still get in touch because we're regularly looking and expanding in all areas of the business. Okay, t-shirts. Anyone who's joining the Reaction Action, just fill out this form, give us your address, your t-shirt size, and we will send you a swag pack with t-shirts and stickers and notepads. Happy to have folks out there in the community in our gear. And I think that's it for my overview. We are going to switch over to having Spencer jump in, and Spencer is joining us from Colorado. He's on our engineering team. He's going to share a little bit of a recap of our performance sprint, and then we'll talk a little bit about kind of what we're working on next, kind of post performance. Actually, it's kind of all tied to performance and more. So Spencer, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you, Sarah. So I can't remember the last time that we shared a big update on a reaction action, but I will share a little bit. So our major releases that we've pushed out, and I say major in the sense of major for us, not necessarily major in the version number, but we've released 1.7 and 1.8. Both of those have some pretty significant changes. So 1.7, we started introducing, I guess, our performance enhancements. And when we talk about a performance sprint that we've been working on, we're talking about three distinct parts of the performance. So we're talking about developer performance. And so by that, we include things like adding ESLint rules to our app. We include things like, like cleaning up technical debt that makes it more difficult for a new developer to jump in and actively know what's going on. We include things, like just abstracting patterns that maybe were all over the app before into, a new way to do it. We're also including, maybe more traditional measures of performance. How long does it take to restart the app when you make a code change? I still think that does kind of lend itself towards a developer happiness and developer performance. That's something we've been actively working on as well. And then we're also, starting to work on performance in the sense of that first page load as well. Customer performance. How fast is it when a customer navigates from the product grid to the product detail page, et cetera. So those have been, I guess, some of our goals. We have added brand new ESLint rules in 1.7. In 1.8 through 1.8.2, we've kind of finished adding those ESLint rules for the developer side of things. We've also done a number of things with dynamically loading modules. So we have gone from an app that would load everything essentially right at the beginning to an app where we're dynamically loading some of our bigger modules, such as transliteration. Mike actually worked on some of this himself, so happy to have him here. He can talk a little bit more about that. We've done a few other refactors where we've been abstracting parts of things that were dependent on Meteor. So we're now working with NPM versions of certain packages instead of Meteor versions of certain packages. Some of this is scheduled to land in our 1.9 release, which it's coming up soon. Other things we've done, we've replaced graphics magic / the image magic dependency with a NPM library called Sharp, which, I don't really know where that falls in terms of performance, but it's definitely a boost, and it means that you no longer have to wrangle graphics magic or image magic onto your machine or onto the machine that you're building towards. Moment.js is another piece that we've pulled out and is now dynamically loaded. That's a really big library that we didn't necessarily need to be loading all the time. It was only used in certain parts of the app. So we're now dynamically loading that. I think, one of the things that will make the biggest difference is some of the product publication performance. That's stuff that we're working on towards 1.9. I know that's something that we really needed to focus on. It's been on I would say our top 10 hit list for a while, and we finally got around to doing it. Mike actually led the development on this along with our engineer, Nat. So what we've done with that is we've essentially created a whole nother layer, which is we call it the product catalog, but it's a publication that once you hit the publish button, will publish a denormalized or a packaged up version of the product to a new collection. And then from that collection, we can publish very quickly to the client for customers. So this is a customer view. It means that there's none of the admin functionality. You don't get necessarily some of the features that you're going to need if you're actually working with the products. But it's a very fast collection that allows you to publish to the client for the customer view in a way that previously we didn't have a way to abstract that from the admin view. So those are some of the big hitters. We also have a few refactors that have been on our list for a long time, changing from a Meteor version of Simple Schema to the NPM version of Simple Schema is one of the big ones. And there are a number of breaking changes in here. If you're looking to upgrade to one of the more recent versions of Reaction, I'd highly encourage you to read the release notes. We have not bumped to 2.0, not necessarily because there's zero breaking changes here, but because there is like an upgrade path. This is not something where you should necessarily be stranded, and there are certain things that you can do to make an app compatible from before. But it may take a little bit of work, and we've tried to identify in our docs and in our release notes as well as possible exactly how you would need to go about that.
So thanks, Spencer. We're going to get back to kind of these updates and kind of what we're working on next. But before we do that, I know Richard Moot has joined us from Square. So Richard, if you want to come back online, we'll switch over to Richard. I'm going to pull up. Hey, Richard.
Hey, how's it going?
Can you hear us? You can. Great. So we first got to know Richard in his previous company where he was the developer evangelist for ShipPo. He's now moved on to Square as the developer evangelist, and he's going to chat with us today about implementing Square payments in Reaction. He's also got a webinar coming up that he's going to talk to us a little bit about. So welcome back, Richard. We're excited to work with you in your new role.
Yeah, thanks. It's been really fun actually working over here at Square, and a lot of the stuff that we've been trying to promote with our new developer APIs that we've been coming out with to help bring solutions for e-commerce. And my dream scenario would be actually like building out like a full integration with Square and Reaction Commerce to actually like sync catalogs and items and like actually doing like a full checkout process. But initially, my goal here was to write a blog post. Let me actually pull up my slides that I got. All right. But I initially created a blog post that was trying to just implement Square's payment form in Reaction Commerce. I would highly encourage anybody who hasn't already read it to check it out. It does go through the steps on how you can actually get the payment form running through there. The main parts that I was working on was actually just getting everything to work within how Reaction, and I also want to preface that this was a Reaction 1.6 approximately. So things might be a little bit different, but my main idea behind what I was building was trying to fall in line with how forms were already structured within Reaction Commerce. So the main part was trying to make sure that I was using these auto form hooks to actually do the process. And so one of the first things I realized, and I'll actually go through the code a little bit, was I know I probably could have actually inserted the payment form to load within the HTML here, but since a lot of these are templates being inserted, I ran into a couple of hiccups trying to actually load a remote payment form JavaScript, because you actually have to use the one that's loaded directly from our servers. You can't like download a static version and try to load that and use that for processing the payment form. You have to use our hosted version. So the first thing I did was I actually created this. I just used jQuery to dynamically load the script as soon as the form was like loading on the page. And then from there, it's like actually just doing like a standard payment form configuration object with like the application ID, location ID, and the rest of these is just sort of stylings to fall in line with how forms were already looking on Reaction Commerce. And after that, these are all just sort of standard config parts for creating a payment form in Square. And if anybody wants more details on this, you could always just visit squareup.com/developers and go through our documentation where we can go in like more detail of like how you can configure a payment form for your specific implementation, because you might also want to support Apple Pay or MasterPass, and those would be additional options on the config here. Additionally, then we have like, these callbacks, and I was trying to line up these callbacks with the different methods on the auto form. So here, we could actually sort of disregard like the method supported, because I didn't implement Apple Pass and MasterPass, or Apple Pay and MasterPass, just because I didn't think it was really necessary to go that extra step, and it also requires registering a domain with Apple. But yeah, like the standard stuff was like actually this card nonce response received. So after we triggered a submit event, I was actually intercepting like a standard submit, and then sticking this nonce value. And like a nonce is just a single use value to represent all of your user card data. This is how we effectively allow PCI compliance, so that an end user is never having to actually process any PII information. All of this is actually handled by our servers, and then we return back a nonce to sort of represent what was captured from the user. And so that allows you to not have to worry about like any sort of PCI compliance down the road, and then just use that for processing payments going forward. And additionally, like this nonce actually can be used to like create, say, like a card on file. So if you had a customer and you wanted to have recurring charges, or just have a card that was available that can be charged in the future, and you want to store those card details without actually storing any sensitive information, you can actually use that nonce to create a customer card that you can later reference if you wanted to do additional charges. But from there, then you just like run a submit, and then we have a lot of input events for handling different cases. I forgot to check, is everyone able to see the text on here relatively well? I know sometimes it can be kind of small.
Yeah, we can see it pretty well. It seems to be fine.
Great. So after that, it's just sort of hooking on to these templates. So I wrapped everything in this create payment form function. So like after the initial form was rendered, I was manually triggering the creation of the payment form, because Square's payment form is always listening for like DOM loaded event. And of course, in Reaction Commerce, the DOM is actually already loaded, and a lot of things are being loaded in dynamically through JavaScript. And so I actually, just wrapped it all in a function, so that once we actually had this render function trigger, then we can actually load the payment form. And then after that, we're just going back into these hooks where, we actually do the on submit. And I was really just modifying the example template that Reaction already provides, and just sort of shoving in a few values to use the nonce. But to take a look at like what this actually looks like, we can see here that we actually have like some shipping billing. I also connected up my Shippo account to do some shipping options here. And then you can see we actually have like our card, like our payment form loaded here that looks almost exactly like the example that's provided. And we can actually just plug in some bogus data. And if you click complete your order, it'll actually process through. And so like this was just, it doesn't do anything in the back end. I definitely want to clarify that part, because I only wanted to like actually manage the payment form loading, because I know that some developers coming to our platform have had difficulties in actually loading the payment form in like server-side environments, or like anything that's like having special templating. And this was just sort of to be an example of like how you can actually do this in a different kind of system, like with Reaction Commerce, or even if you were like writing it in React, or you had a single page application, this is like more in line with how you would actually load the payment form. Ideally, there would be additional work done. And I think that there's one Reaction Commerce developer who, or somebody who's looking to use Reaction Commerce who reached out to me, who's actually wanting to actually do the extra work to get sort of the back end process working so that you can actually do charges or create customers. But that's pretty much like how I went about doing this implementation. I think to take it a step further, it would be really great to actually do like a catalog sync with our backend. So like if somebody already had, like my ideal scenario is like somebody who already has like a Square store who already has a catalog, they already have items, but they want to go online. Ideally there would be like a plugin, and I want to work with developers to actually like help flush that out, that they could actually just spin up a Reaction Commerce store. It syncs all of their items in their catalog, and then they can actually just start selling right away. Because that's like one of like the biggest barriers. Like we have a lot of brick and mortar stores who they can do a lot of selling in person, but they can't offer anything when their store is not open. And having some sort of online option allows people to at least place orders, and then they can fulfill them when they're going back into their business later. And the great part is that since we track inventory, as long as things are always in sync with Reaction Commerce, then they're always knowing whether or not they actually can fulfill an order at any point in time.
Yep. Hey, Richard, we would love to have conversations around that stuff too. We hear on our side a lot the interest of kind of unifying the digital experience with the in-store experience, and how today it's so fragmented and the data is not shared and it's complicated, and there's all these buzzwords: omni-channel, brick and mortar 2.0, kind of.
Right.
And I don't think anyone's really solved it in a sort of streamlined, sort of single source of truth way. And I think kind of making that catalog sync, and also giving kind of one holistic view of customers across whatever channel, in store or online, is really interesting. So I think that's the really powerful stuff.
I would totally agree with you. I mean, one of the things that we talk about a lot internally is like sort of how things have become a lot more blended in the sale of goods and services. Like, you might go to a salon stylist and, they're sort of like a service provider, but they might also sell some of their shampoo and stuff to you, and you might purchase that online. Is that an online or an offline transaction? And like having a lot of these systems sync together to have the single source of truth, allow people to meet customers where they want to meet them. And that's really what we want to be able to provide. And I think one of the reasons I pick Reaction Commerce as like a first place to actually do this is because I think the way that you can control how things surface to users when they're visiting and be more reactive to like how to actually sell your products online is a little bit more similar to an in-person experience, where you can actually have a sales associate there and like identifying like, oh, you are interested in these things. I can actually like, help you find them more easily, and allowing people to sort of like see the things that they're actually looking for, rather than having to constantly go into like these gigantic e-commerce stores where they're like searching endlessly, and search might not be built out in a sufficient way to allow them to find what they're looking for.
Yep, absolutely. So Richard, I know you're traveling. I think you're at a conference.
Yeah.
Right. So certainly appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. I know you got a developer webinar. Is that right? Kind of maybe tell us when the next one is, and how our community can learn more about it. And there's probably going to be questions that come up from this reaction action. So if there's stuff that we need clarification on, we'll follow up with you.
Sure. So we have a webinar that's going to be on March 27th. It's a Tuesday. I believe it's at, I need to actually double check the details. The link for the event is actually provided in your guys' slides. I recommend anybody who's interested to go ahead and sign up for it. We're going to be talking about Square Checkout. We're going to be like sort of going over an implementation when Square Checkout makes sense. If you want to be able to offer a purchasing process without having to actually build out like a cart and all of these other things, or you want to just sort of like create buy now buttons to sort of allow payments through different kinds of channels, like on social selling, like doing like through Instagram, Facebook, or anything like that. This can allow you to sort of do those kinds of things, and we'll sort of talk about how Square Checkout can actually be used going forward.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Richard. Really appreciate it. And
thanks for having me.
We'll continue the conversations for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Thanks. So we're gonna continue back kind of where we were right before Richard joined us, which is just sharing a little bit more. I know there's some questions coming in, so we're definitely going to switch over to Q&A. But maybe Spencer, Mike, Tyson want to talk a little bit more about the performance sprints, and then also kind of what we've got going next, especially around GraphQL.
Yeah, right. Spencer, do you have more any more info on the performance sprint that you want to cover?
We can kind of get into it as it comes up, but maybe we start with kind of where we're going.
Okay, yeah. Alexi's asked a really great question. I think this is something good for us to get into. Again, I'm Tyson Bennett. I'm the lead architect here at Reaction. And Alexi asked, is the API endpoint on the roadmap? It says that the API is not currently built into Reaction Commerce in the docs. So currently, that is correct. The API is not, we don't have a standalone API, but this is an exciting question because we're actually working on it right now. So we've started work on implementing a GraphQL API endpoint directly inside the application. And so this is directly related to the performance work that we've been doing. It's a continuation of performance. So what this will allow us to do is to separate the client side from the server side. That's going to impact performance in several ways. One, for development performance. If you're working in the front end, then you only need to reload the front end code. Likewise, if you're on the server side, you would only need to reload the server side code. It also will provide opportunity for custom front ends. Of course, we will be building out reference front end that uses the GraphQL. And it also improves performance because with GraphQL, the client can request only the data that it needs at a certain point in time. So it makes the network traffic a lot more performant. So this is work that we have started, and I'm really excited to get this into the application as soon as possible. Mike's working on this as well.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much the majority of the team
Right.
on the engineering side is working on some of the GraphQL functionality. So that's like literally our current sprints and upcoming sprints. We'll share a lot more details around kind of specific timelines on our blog and on our Gitter channel and our community calls. So it's active. It's something we know is going to make everything kind of in terms of the overall efficiency of the app, the performance of the app, much more streamlined. So we're also like Spencer alluded to this, but one thing that we are working to put in place is some benchmarking, some testing around performance. So we'll have some specific data sets that we can all, including our community, start testing against. And we'll be sharing that data just to show how we're making improvements in terms of the overall developer experience, the operator experience, as well as the end consumers, shopper experience. So we're going to publish a standard set of data and then put some benchmarks out there and just start talking and sharing openly about where things are currently and where things are headed. Should we just jump into some Q&A? Should we take on the publishing question? Tyson or Spencer,
Sure.
You want to jump in? So the question from Michelle or Michael, apologies if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but what are we using to publish Reaction Commerce? Anything that we've written ourselves? Is it MUP? And where would you host it?
Yeah, so hosting, there's many different ways that you could host Reaction. As part of our build process, we do publish Docker images, and we have a demo. This will be changing, I think, in 1.9, Spencer. that we're changing from a Docker Compose to Docker Compose demo, just to kind of clarify that it's a demo. But that provides a Docker Compose file that will start reaction with the Mongo database, MongoDB database alongside of it. So Docker is one way, and you can do that in a variety of ways with Docker Compose, Kubernetes, AWS ECS. You can also host Mongo and run reaction just as a Meteor app. We have clients that are hosting on apps like Heroku and other hosting providers.
AWS, Heroku,
Yeah.
DigitalOcean. We'll look to provide more documentation on and help to streamline that deployment process to third-party solutions. So we know that's something that we can add a little bit more clarity around. But there's a lot of flexibility in terms of where you can publish and where you can host your Reaction Commerce shops. I see in the chat room several questions coming in around marketplace, kind of multi-seller. So we are already have built-in support for single tenant shops as well as marketplaces. So in our 1.5 release is when we formally announced our support for marketplaces. So when you are logged in as an administrator of Reaction Commerce, you can go to the settings and enable marketplace, and that sets up a whole workflow for you to be able to invite other shops and create a marketplace-like experience. We have documentation about that in our docs. If you have further questions around kind of multi-seller marketplace experience, just jump into Gitter or any of our other channels. So it's already, you can develop marketplaces. There are already marketplaces live running in production on Reaction Commerce. Another question from Alex: when can we expect an app store set up for Reaction? So I'm assuming that means kind of a marketplace of packages, or not entirely sure. Like when will there be sort of third-party kind of apps, whether we build them or maybe kind of a marketplace of apps?
I think that's something under design and review at the moment. I think Ryan has actually been working on some dashboarding there. I'm not exactly sure when that will be prioritized and make it into the product, but it's something that we're definitely discussing at the moment and trying to figure out how to get that in.
Yeah, so it's something we've always talked about in terms of and as part of our overall vision is to have a marketplace for apps or packages. It's something that Ryan, our design director, myself, kind of the core team, has in mind for the app. We don't have a specific date for when we'll have that in place, but it's always been something we've architected for and been thinking about from the get-go. Just looking, good questions are coming in. This is great. Trying to keep up with it all. So John's asking about kind of living in Europe, stricter laws. Do we have experience with shops from Germany or Austria? So that in terms of the open source community, there are installations happening worldwide, Europe, Asia, Africa, kind of all over. We ourselves have not, we at Reaction Commerce, the company, have not specifically looked into kind of all of the different laws in the EU or kind of other areas of the world. We would love to have conversations around that in terms of what we would need to do to help to provide kind of more coverage there. But it's not something that we ourselves have taken on to date. I think what will happen there is if there are specific clients or projects that are interested in using Reaction Commerce, then we would get involved in terms of helping, especially if there's modifications that would need to happen within the core. So our philosophy is if there's stuff that you need in the core, definitely get in touch, and then we will prioritize that, we'll document that, we'll work closely with you to understand your requirements. And then, we'll implement that as part of our ongoing kind of continuous development. This is Joel, will there be a mobile app integration or be available as a mobile app? So kind of a native iOS app or native Android app. We actually were just talking about sort of native apps yesterday. It comes up pretty often. We were also talking about potentially even a reaction-powered point-of-sale application. So maybe kind of this ties a little bit to GraphQL and what that could unlock. So
yeah,
we want this.
Yeah, we do. We definitely do want this. So GraphQL definitely opens the way to these kinds of applications. Once we have a standalone API, then basically we are opening that up to any consumer that can consume that API, and that could be a mobile app. It could be a point of sale application. It could be another custom front end. So definitely we're looking toward these things and we're building towards that. And GraphQL is a big step towards those goals.
Yep. Are there any Kubernetes/Helm examples? This is from the chat. I'm just jumping around trying to get to all these great questions, but let's talk a little bit about Kubernetes.
Yeah, there are some open source. We have some community members that have built out some Kubernetes examples, and so those are definitely worth a look. We have also had some internal, we've got a fully fleshed out Kubernetes setting, and that may be made open source at some point in the future. We definitely support Kubernetes. It's a great deployment environment. So I would like to see more examples and information for the community to run in the same way.
Yep. So we have the perennial reaction action question around replacing Blaze with React. It comes up every time, and also I think kind of the SEO question. So I'm going to put Mike on the spot. We'll talk a little bit about the Blaze to React conversion, and also second SEO. So where are we at with this?
We are 100% still converting from Blaze to React. I know it's gotten stalled a few times, but currently we have a team member, Nat, working on the conversion of the address book to React, and then we will continue converting the components as they come up. We have the checkout, which is I think the last real major component of the application that's in Blaze, as well as the profile page, and then we have to convert the rest of the admin views, and then that should be it. But we are definitely working towards getting rid of Blaze.
Should we talk about component library and the current work that you're doing there as part of the GraphQL sprint?
I mean, we're splitting out components out of Reaction into NPM packages and hooking them up to GraphQL so that the app is a little bit more separate and a monolithic piece. So we're doing a lot of work with that. And as for the SEO question, I think GraphQL helps with that as well. There's two forms of that. We have the GraphQL endpoint, so we could build potentially a static version of the store if you needed it to have a certain level of SEO. There's also, I think, this Chrome that we could also integrate to use that as well, since I believe that would be a lot better than the implementation we did with Phantom.js, since that's a headless Chrome is more modern and renders your sites better. And that's essentially SSR itself is rather complicated to implement.
I think that's one of the interesting things around using the API, especially with GraphQL, is that clients can come in a few different forms, right? We could have a static site that's loading dynamically from the API, but we could also build a server-side application that is in turn a client of the API that would perform server-side rendering and things like that to for more SEO performance.
Exactly.
That.
So there's a question from Danilo around starting a client project in Brazil, asking sort of what kind of help we could provide in terms of building web stores for clients. My answer to that is definitely get in touch with us. Go to reactioncommerce.com and we'll try to give you some more information. We, in general, the Reaction Commerce core team, We don't take on a lot of, if mini or client projects, but we do want to support you as best as we can in terms of helping you with your client projects. The best thing is to give us more information about the specifics of that project, and then we can try to guide you. We do have development partners ourselves that are kind of agency partners that we could point you to as well. So the best thing is to get in touch. We can have a follow-up conversation, and that goes across the board. If there's any other folks out there that are working on client projects, just let us know. We're going to be ramping up our development partner program over this coming year, and want to provide more Reaction Commerce developer partners for these types of projects. There was a question I saw in the chat: is there digital product support? So not built into the core today, but it's certainly something that you could extend and provide in terms of digital. So right now it's heavily focused more on physical goods. We have seen packages. In fact, Spencer was part of this in his previous job, building out rental goods support. There are subscription packages out there, or features, and digital has come up multiple times. So it's certainly something that could be extended and added. And we would love to learn more and see if we can help guide you in terms of how to best implement support for digital products. You have to customize the PDP, obviously the checkout flow, and the kind of post-purchase experience. But anything to add on digital product support in particular?
I would say, I think customizing products is probably one of the areas that Reaction excels. I think that was one of the reasons that when I was at Get Outfitted that we did choose Reaction, was the ability to quickly add new product types, adjust the product flow, adjust the customer experience after a checkout. I would say the rental product modifications we did, and we did this back in like 0.12, so that was ancient Reaction. But the rental product modifications we did were, I would say, significantly more complicated than I think doing a digital product would be. I think doing a digital product, the types of things you'd have to consider would be, there's probably tax implications. There's definitely shipping implications. And then there's, just the overall post-purchase experience, like you were saying, Sarah. I do think if we don't have somebody in the community who's already done so, I imagine this would be something the community would be interested in either seeing or contributing to. We do have a fairly active community that is, building plugins, some of which we know about, and others which I think are less known to us. But that is a question that continues to come up. So
some of the main modifications would probably be around customized download links after purchase, or a license key generation, depending on how you're selling your digital product.
There's a couple questions in the chat around kind of performance and how kind of, if we have sales material or any stats kind of benchmarking us against different stacks out there, whether it's the LAMP stack or other competitive, legacy platforms. We don't have that kind of benchmark kind of sales collateral today. I mentioned this earlier. We are going to be putting in place some benchmarking and data sets for Reaction Commerce, and we'll be publicizing the data around that and sharing that. And we are going to be, we are building for scale for enterprise level clients. We're actually working with clients with, catalogs, and starting to work with catalogs in the hundreds of thousands, doing, millions, hundreds of millions of US dollars across their platform. So it is built for scale. It is something we are designing and architecting for. And obviously, as we expand from a company standpoint, we'll produce more kind of white papers, case studies. There's actually going to be a case study coming up in April for a pretty cool client that's just launched. So we know that we have to get some more information out there to help you make these decisions, especially when you're out there trying to sell Reaction Commerce and you're getting questions of how it compares to some of the other solutions. So we'll be providing that certainly over the coming months and getting some more data out to the community. Yep. So we're going to keep going with some questions. Let's see. So this came from I think it's Jonathan. It's about heavily modifying the front end of Reaction Commerce. And basically the question is, how can we modify the front end and keep all the functionality Reaction Commerce has created? You know, they're kind of maybe worried about what they'll actually be able to reuse. So let's talk a little bit about that today. And also, I think that also shifts a little bit in kind of in the world when we have GraphQL fully implemented, right?
Right. Mike, you want to talk about the front end and modifications?
So at the moment, the front end is pretty tied together. The admin and the customer view are basically in the same application. We try to, as much as possible, keep the admin in the sidebar and the customer view in another area while you're signed in. But when you're trying to customize it, you're basically customizing the product detail page, the product grid, the checkout page, and maybe the profile page. The rest of it should be living in another portion of the application, but it might be a little difficult to abstract that a little bit with the theme, but it is possible. In terms of the meteor methods, you can call all the meteor methods that the client side calls, either through DDP externally or somewhere else in the application. The start of the application is in the router folder. In the imports, core, plugins router is where the application gets bootstrapped into the DOM. And that's probably a good place to start if you want to maybe strip some of that back and build your own front end from scratch. And then you can look at all the methods we call in the application to replicate the functionality that we've already created.
Yeah. So that's kind of how it works now. What Mike didn't touch on is that you can also use the component replacement API that we have. So if you wanted to keep a majority of the app and you just wanted to replace certain sections, you know, let's say just a certain area of the PDP or just the whole PDP, really, you could use our component replacement API to just replace certain components of the app. I think where we're going is pretty exciting, and Tyson, I can let you talk a little more about this, but essentially, once we have the component library and we can start building up essentially some example front ends, you'll be able to more or less pick and choose which components you want. They'll come with some type of built-in connectivity to Reaction, you know, which you could replace if you needed to, but it'll be essentially a library where you can, you know, check out different components that you want and use them in whatever way fits your specific application.
Yeah, thanks, Spencer. You know, as we're focusing on GraphQL, I think that's the forward direction that we're looking. You know, as we build that out, there will be, you know, a period of time where we will overlap these two methods, you know, the DDP and the Meteor interface. You know, we're not going to immediately turn that off or remove it, but we will have these two interfaces side by side, GraphQL and Meteor, and then eventually down the road in a future major version, we will, you know, deprecate Meteor and move forward with GraphQL in full support.
Great. I think we'll take just a couple more questions. I know we're running out of time. So Alexi's asking about does Reaction Commerce work well with large product catalogs, i.e. kind of millions of products? Talking a little bit about performance here. Does it load all product catalog in memory on first page load? Kind of looking at the documentation, kind of server-side pagination concept, something we've definitely talked about, and we are kind of, you know, in terms of who we are selling Reaction Commerce to is enterprise level clients with, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of products. Because of the marketplace support, we do fully intend to be performant and optimized for large catalogs, high traffic, high volumed commerce shops and marketplaces. I know we have work to do, right? And that's some of the stuff that we talk a lot about, but maybe just share a little bit of kind of our thoughts on page loading and pagination
Yeah.
Large catalogs.
Yeah. Well, as Sarah mentioned before, we don't really have the data to empirically define what the performance is across a variety of scale, and that's something that we are going to do better at, and we are going to create some test data sets and have better definition around that performance. As we've been talking about, the last few sprints have been around performance. The last few versions have been around performance, and where we're looking, GraphQL is definitely a part of that. This may not be directly related to GraphQL, but it's in the same ballpark in terms of performance. So I think that we're going to be making changes across the board to make the performance better. And so as we get the evidence from tests, we will be tweaking and changing things to make the performance better. We definitely want this to be our story, that you can have a catalog with millions of product and be confident that you're going to be able to sell to your customers.
Yep. We'll take the kind of one last question. Alexi was asking about our docs and kind of an analytics package around personalizing content. And where we go, there it is. Wasn't able to find kind of additional information. So our vision from the get-go has been that you can personalize any area of reaction commerce so that it is personalized. You can do dynamic merchandising, dynamic promotions, dynamic pricing. It's really why we have focused on it as being a real-time experience, so that you can provide a more compelling experience for your customers, your shoppers. That is all stuff that's been part of our kind of future vision. So there isn't a lot of additional data out there. So I can understand why you haven't found it. It is something that is on our roadmap in the near term. Let's say in the next year, we want to start introducing reaction insights, reaction merchandising, and personalization apps on top of the platform. So that's the stuff, honestly, that I've been excited about from the very day we started the company. And I know we've teased it in some of the docs and on some of our kind of on our website, but it's certainly something that we've been building from the very beginning. And I would expect that we'll share a lot more information in the coming months, probably in the next quarter. We'll just start to outline what we're thinking about, and then kind of a roadmap of features and functionality that we'll start to introduce. And like anything, we're going to start with MVPs. We're going to start with an alpha, and it's going to be kind of limited at first, and then we'll continue to add and expand the analytics capabilities within the core, and then also other packages that we'll provide on top of it. Anything to add? I leave out on the analytics side.
Covered that.
It. Great. So I know we didn't get to everyone's questions. Love seeing all the questions and participation. As I said at the start, we will make sure we address all these questions in a follow-up blog post. So if we didn't get to your question, stay tuned or jump into Gitter. We'll be super active there today and the rest of the week to make sure we get your questions answered. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Great. Thank you.